The Pats look to continue their winning ways while Atlanta tries to bounce back from a rough loss against Miami. He's Aaron Freeman. I'm Nick Cattles, and this is a crossover edition of Locked On Patriots and Locked On Falcons.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's happening? I am your host, Nick Cattles of Locked On Patriots, of course, and today I'm joined by the host of Locked On Falcons, Aaron Freeman, for the latest edition of our Locked On crossovers during this 2025 NFL season. And don't forget to give us that thumbs up, throw a comment in whether you love us or hate us. Don't forget to comment, and don't forget to subscribe to each of our channels, Locked On Patriots and Locked On Falcons. On today's crossover episode, we're going to give you 3 keys that will decide the game on each side. Also, what are the matchups on Sunday that grab Aaron and I's attention and could have a significant impact on how the game is played? But first, let's talk storylines. We appreciate you joining the show, making us your first listen, and for being an everydayer. Don't forget again to like, comment, and subscribe. The Locked On Patriots and Locked On Falcons podcasts are proud partners of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And Crossover Thursday is presented by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Aaron, I have been watching your stuff this week, and I don't know whether to give you condolences or just to feel bad for you, because I keep hearing one word. I keep hearing one word coming from your mouth during these pods. Apathetic. I'm apathetic. I'm apathetic. The vibes don't seem great right now down in Atlanta, Aaron. Is that the biggest story, or is there another bigger story going on?
No, that's pretty much it. You know, going into the Dolphins game, the vibes were terrible in Miami, and they seem to pass whatever bad mojo they had going on to the Atlanta Falcons with what was supposed to be kind of a bounce back game for the Falcons coming off of that 49ers loss last week. The Falcons just got completely outmatched by a struggling Dolphins team, and now the Falcons are sort of the struggling team that is hoping that they can have a get-right game against New England. Normally, the way it works in Atlanta is if you're the opposing team that's struggling, like we saw last week with Miami, like we saw the week before with San Francisco, who hadn't had a lot of success running the football, you can get right against the Atlanta Falcons, and now the shoe is on the other foot, and the Falcons need to have someone get right. You know, things seem to go pretty well for the Patriots, so it doesn't feel like they need a get right game at this point in time. But besides fixing the vibes, probably the big story is going to be whether or not Michael Penix is going to start this week. He did miss last week's game against Miami, which was a contributing factor to the struggles that the Falcons had offensively. He was dealing with a bone bruise last week. Raheem Morris said at the beginning of last week he felt good about Penix playing, and then about 24 hours before the game started, we found out that Kirk Cousins would be starting. This week he says he feels good about Michael Penix playing this weekend. So I guess we'll wait till 24 hours before this game before we officially get word on what his status is going to be. But that's going to be the main thing that we keep an eye on, as well as a couple of other injuries on the injury report. Jesse Bates being another player that was limited. Jalen Walker, their rookie first-round pick. Billy Bowman, their rookie fourth-round nickel corner, as well. Drake London dealing with a hip injury. Kyle Pitts being a new addition, dealing with an ankle injury. So a lot of key players are a little nicked up, and so we'll keep an eye on some of those injuries as the week unfolds.
Yeah, my biggest storyline, I think, going into this game, Aaron, for the Patriots, and it ties in with their injury report now that came out today, and it's whether or not they've actually figured out the run game. You know, you look at the last 2 weeks, 175 or more yards on the ground, and that all sounds great. But when you look at some of the, other numbers, you kind of realize that a decent amount of that is Drake Maye. And Drake Maye is getting 50 yards. He's getting 60-plus rushing yards. So that's good, because you don't mind a quarterback that can pick up those yards as long as he's not getting croaked like, a Jaden Daniels or other guys, which has been an issue for Drake Maye a few times already early in his career. But you don't want to overlook that impact of Drake Maye that he has on the running game, because you want to look at the running backs and say, are they doing enough? And last week, TreVeyon Henderson, who was much heralded out of Ohio State, top 40 pick in the draft this past April. He had a tremendous camp Aaron, a tremendous camp, and the expectations were really high for him right out of the gates, and he has struggled early. And last week, he finally showed some life, had 75 yards on the ground. So I think the question is, have they found some things that they can do, namely attack the perimeter with TreVeyon Henderson, which they did a lot last weekend? Or was that just kind of a flash? Was that a flash in the pan 1 week, good game rookie, and then you kind of go back to, oh boy, he's not seeing things as clearly as we hoped he would, and there's some hesitation to his game. And tied into that is we just found out today, Ramondre Stevenson did not practice on Wednesday. It is a toe issue. Not sure if it's having to do with the Ramondre injury or they just felt like the Patriots just felt like they wanted to add another running back to the practice squad, but they did sign Dearness Johnson, who got released by the Cardinals in the last 24 hours or so. So now you've got Ramondre Stevenson, who's been the bell cow for all intents and purposes, not practicing with a toe. You've got TreVeyon Henderson coming off of his best week, but was that a 1 week thing? And if they can't run the ball, then this offense is not as dynamic as it can be. A lot of it has been Drake Maye. So I think that's the bigger storyline for me is the run game that we've seen the past couple of weeks an aberration, or is it legit? Do you have something else that kind of sticks out to you about the Falcons before we get to Sunday?
Well, I'll say, we're going to talk some of the key matchups, but if you want to run the football, you will absolutely be able to run the football against the Atlanta Falcons. So they have not been able to stop anybody all season long. Yeah. If that is the one element that you're hoping the Patriots do get right this week, and, you played the Browns last week, right? Who had a very good run defense. And if you were able to get something going against them, I imagine, going from one of the best run defenses in the NFL to one of the worst run defenses in the NFL is exactly the boost that you're looking for. And, I've been keeping an eye on TreVeyon. He's on one of my fantasy teams this year. So yeah. I'm well aware of the preseason hype and being like, yes, I'm definitely drafting this guy. And then the regular season disappointment. So I'm slightly torn on how I want him to perform this upcoming week, because it feels like an investment made in August is going to pay off potentially this week, but at the same time, much to the detriment of the Locked On Falcons podcast.
Yeah, there was a lot of excitement about TreVeyon. A lot of excitement. I mean, his first preseason touch, he takes it to the house on a kick return against Washington. It's like, oh boy, here we go, light it up. And then, as you know, as a fantasy football owner, not much going on until last week. So maybe he turned the corner last week. All right, in an AFC NFC game, we get matchups that we don't really see often. So we'll discuss some of the marquee matchups on Sunday next. It's a Locked On Patriots and Falcons crossover, and we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement of this sports season. Whether you're following the NFL, NBA, or both, there's no better time to jump in on the action. If you haven't tried it yet, Prize Picks is the simplest way to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, and if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play anywhere Prize Picks operates, including California, Texas, and Georgia. You can use Prize Picks during both football Sundays and NBA tip-offs. It keeps every game exciting, and the new Stacks feature is a game changer. You can now pick more on Browns points, threes, and assists in the same lineup. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. Let's be honest here. Most of us can't even name all of our financial accounts, let alone what they're worth. Between 401ks, savings, and investments, it's easy to lose track, and that can mean leaving money on the table. That's why you should check out Monarch, an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch can help you organize your accounts, track your spending, and get a better handle on your investments without having to touch a spreadsheet. Sounds good, doesn't it? Monarch's visual dashboards and smart tools make it so much easier to understand where your money's going and how to make it work harder for you. Don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarch.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarch.com. The code is LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. He's Aaron Freeman, Locked On Falcons. I am Nick Cattles, Locked On Patriots. If you don't know, now you know. And if you want to help out a couple of guys, like, comment, subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. That'll help us out. It's that algorithm stuff that we always talk about. Yeah, that will help. Like, comment, and subscribe. All right, marquee matchups, Aaron. As we get ready for Sunday, I mentioned this in the little tease. AFC, NFC matchup. You don't have this very often. Falcons don't play the Patriots very often. So we have some I think interesting matchups coming up on Sunday. Where would you start?
Yeah, I'm going to start with the strength of the Falcons so far. It hasn't looked quite as strong the last couple of weeks, but that's the defense. And one of the things that you saw if you watched the Falcons-Dolphins game was Jalen Waddle really gave them a lot of troubles in that game, really took advantage of Mike Hughes. And one of the things I talked about on Locked On Falcons yesterday was, now that we have the clarity of hindsight, probably would have been a smart call to put the Falcons' top corner, AJ Terrell, on the Dolphins' top wide receiver, Jalen Waddle, and maybe that would have helped prevent him from going off in that game. And I'm hoping the Falcons learn their lesson and look at Stefon Diggs and say, let's not make that mistake this week, and let's see if we can get AJ matched up against Diggs as much as possible. I believe the last time they went toe-to-toe was when Diggs was still in Buffalo in 2021, and Terrell did a really good job against Diggs on that particular Sunday. He also, I recall, I think his rookie year, I want to say, no, that was Diggs was in Buffalo then. But yeah, I was thinking they were playing the Vikings, but that was Justin Jefferson. Anyway, but just light work for AJ Terrell, locking down Justin Jefferson. But because of how well AJ Terrell has played this year, I do feel like that's going to be a key matchup. One of the concerns, though, is if you're going to have AJ Terrell shadow Stefon Diggs, that means you're going to have to play a lot of man coverage. And that can be a problem because, as you mentioned earlier, with Drake Maye's scrambling ability, that he has no problem. Basically, when he realizes that the defenders have their back to the defense, he'll just take off and run. And a couple of weeks ago, that probably wouldn't have been something that stopped the Falcons from doing that, because they were able to keep Josh Allen scrambling in check against the Bills, but they had Divine Diablo, their linebacker there, who was a really good athlete and could essentially spy a player like Josh Allen, and theoretically would be able to spy a player like Drake Maye as well. But Diablo's on IR with a broken forearm, and his replacement in JD Bertrand is, let's just say, the polar opposite of him from an athleticism standpoint. So it's going to be a challenge for the Falcons to figure out if they're going to play that style and try to man up these Patriots receivers. Is that going to make them more vulnerable to the QB run game? And they don't really have a good answer currently on their roster if they're going to try to keep Drake Maye scrambling in check at this point in time, especially if Jalen Walker, who's probably their best answer, if he doesn't come back. He's missed the last 2 games. He's dealing with that groin injury. And so they really need him to come back this week if they're going to have at least a decent shot of keeping Drake Maye in check.
Yeah, I mean, I was watching the squad show from you guys, and my goodness, I started to feel bad for JD Bertrand. I'm a Notre Dame fan, right? So I'll just put that on the table. So I know about JD Bertrand. I saw him play college an awful lot. So certainly interesting to go from Diablo to Bertrand for sure. The other part of what you mentioned as far as Stefon Diggs, it's an interesting thing where one of the positives about Drake Maye's season so far is he hasn't necessarily forced the issue with Stefon Diggs. Now, I thought last week he did try to force a throw to Diggs, and it ended up being a pick, a nice play by Cleveland's defense. I believe it was Carson Schlesinger who got the pick. A really nice play from him, but it was because Drake kind of forced it or was trying to force it to Stefon Diggs. He's really been good. Drake's really been good about the old, who's your favorite receiver, the open receiver crap. He's actually done pretty well with that. So we'll see if he continues. Mac Hollins, for example, last week had a big week for the Pats offense. So we'll see if he continues to go down that road. For me, I mean, this is kind of low hanging fruit, but I've got to start here, and that's just Bijan Robinson in the front 7. And gathering from what you guys have talked about and gals on the squad show and Locked On Falcons, it feels like, hey, if you can do a good job on Bijan Robinson, then you can do a good job, going against this Atlanta offense. So Patriots, as you know, I've heard you talk about it this week, Aaron. one of the best run defenses in football so far. And that really hasn't been because they played a bunch of weak teams. I mean, they shut down Rico Dowdle, who's been one of the better backs in football, especially the last few weeks. They shut down James Cook. So they've shown the ability to slow down some of the best running backs in football. Bijan is a different kind of cat. No, he wasn't great last weekend, but I think you walk into Sunday thinking you can't let that dude cook, because if he cooks, that can change the game. So you got to make sure the front seven does the job, swarm, tackle, wrap up, and just try to hold on for dear life and make sure Bijan doesn't run for $150. What's another marquee matchup you're looking at?
Well, I think you nailed it with the Bijan one, because with all the other question marks the Falcons have with Drake London, now Pitts, Penix, etc., Bijan already was the best player on the team. And right now you're trying to figure out, okay, who's going to be the second best player on the team. And right now you're sort of questioning that, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. So the Falcons really need Bijan to have a sort of big week. But when it comes to the matchups that are also going to facilitate that, it's going to be about the battle in the trenches.
Yeah.
Raheem Morris has unfortunately used the name of the city, Atlanta, as a verb in each of the last 2 weeks to talk about being the more physical team. And he said 2 weeks ago, the 49ers out Atlanted the Falcons, meaning that they were the more physical team. He said it this past week against the Miami Dolphins. No one's in the history of at least the Mike McDaniel era has ever considered the Miami Dolphins to be a physical football team, but he used it to say that they out physicaled the Falcons this past week. And so essentially the running joke is that I don't think that word means what you think it means, Raheem, based off of how the Falcons have been playing. And so Atlanta does not mean being the more physical team. It means being the less physical team. But we'll give Raheem the benefit of the doubt. Third time's the charm, that the Falcons are going to have to out Atlanta the New England Patriots, or maybe out New England the Patriots this week. And that means getting more physical in the trenches. And so their offensive line has to play better. They have been pushed around the last few weeks. And, as you mentioned with this Patriots front, it's not necessarily because of like one sort of superstar sort of guy that you're like, well, we got to block that guy to keep him in check. But it's just a group effort of just good football players playing good football. Milton Williams, Christian Barmore, among others, Harold Landry, etc. And that's going to be the challenge for this Falcons offensive line. So that's another key matchup. Not sort of one guy, oh, we got to block this guy. It's just like you got to block everybody, because all of those guys are capable of making plays.
Part of the trench talk is also part of my marquee matchups. And this might be a little bit odd to you, because I know right tackle has been a sore spot for Atlanta this year. But I'm actually looking at K'Lavon Chaisson against Jake Matthews. Chaisson has been really good. He's looked like the first-round talent that Jacksonville drafted years ago. He has been a disruptor of passing games. He is not great, to put it lightly, against the run at times, and teams have tried to focus on K'Lavon Chaisson in the run game. But the reason why I look at K'Lavon Chaisson versus Jake Matthews is, Matthews is ranked third by Pro Football Focus as far as the best, third best tackle in pass protection and pass blocking. So my thought is, if Matthews handles Chaisson one-on-one, that will allow Atlanta to help the right tackle situation. But if K'Lavon Chaisson can cause some trouble and disrupt against Jake Matthews, now Atlanta starts to run out of options as far as protecting some of their offensive line issues that they've had. So I think if Chaisson can play well enough, that can cause some trouble for the Falcons. And I would also say, obviously, like your O-line, Atlanta's O-line, Patriots O-line will also have a challenge against Atlanta's defensive line and their pass rush, even though it might not have been awesome against Miami. So the trench warfare, so to speak, is absolutely on the table. Anything else you want to add as far as marquee matchups here?
No, there is one thing I'll add, but I'll say, to piggyback on your last point, there is no Myles Garrett on this team that you have to basically stop from getting 5 sacks. But the goal for the Falcons is it's sort of more of a amoeba group of guys where anybody can win up front. And so it's kind of that sort of style. So it's not about blocking one guy. It's about blocking, 5, 6, 7, 8 guys with the Falcons deep rotation. So we'll see if the defensive line can step up. They were able to take advantage of some offensive line injuries early in the season. They have kind of come back down a little bit to earth these last couple of weeks, and most of their success rushing the quarterback has been via the blitz. I went through and watched a bunch of Drake Maye against the blitz earlier today, and he seems to have no problem dealing with that. So that's going to be a challenge unless the Falcons can win with a more standard rush this week.
All right, 3 keys to victory next as we continue today's crossover episode of Locked On Patriots and Locked On Falcons, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's talk about Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else. From footwork to breathwork, athletes, they sweat all the details. The type of details that lead to a 5-game winning streak and MVP conversations for your quarterback. Well, Mazda brings that same intention to how they craft every model. You can feel Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to the available Napa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. And here's something that's really cool, especially if you have to deal with the weather in the Northeast. All-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, so you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, Mazda sweats every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda. Move and be moved. All right, so I think everybody at this point knows the rules with the crossover here at the Locked On Patriots crew, and I'm sure same for Aaron Freeman, who's joining us here with the Locked On Falcons. No prediction zone in the crossover. No prediction zone. I don't know if the bosses get upset. I said this before. Ross Jackson, who tends to look over us as a manager. He can text me if he doesn't like this, but I don't like giving predictions too early. I like waiting until the Friday episode. So no predictions here, but Aaron and I will give you 3 keys to victory, what we think each team needs to do to get the dub on Sunday. Again, you can check out Friday's episode for our official predictions. But Aaron, what is your first key for Atlanta?
Well, it goes back to, that verb, Atlanta. It's about, you got to match physicality, right?
Yeah.
And with a Mike Vrabel coach team, rarely are you ever going to question the toughness of his football teams. Well, you can question the toughness of the Atlanta Falcons all day, every day at this stage. And so the Falcons are going to have to close that gap first and foremost, because pretty much everything they want to do offensively and defensively is predicated off of that. For me, my second key, it's a cliche for a reason, but it really fits for the Atlanta Falcons. It's about winning the turnover battle. I've been keeping track of this since Raheem Morris has taken over as the Falcons head coach. When the Falcons are positive on turnover margin, meaning that they have more takeaways than giveaways, they're 8-0 under Raheem Morris. When they're behind in negative turnover margin, they're 1-9.
Wow.
With Miami being the 9th loss this past week. And when it's an even turnover margin, they're 2-4. So basically, if they don't steal a series away from a team with a positive turnover margin, they're dead in the water. And then my last one is also sort of piggybacking on a similar point with looking at their records. They need a fast start, right? Their offense has gotten off the slow starts these last couple of weeks. It's been a trend of theirs on the road. But you look at this season so far, they're 3-1 in games where they score on their opening drive. They're 0-3 in games when they don't score on their opening drive. So if this team wants to have some success on the road, it's going to have to get going early this week in New England.
It's interesting. I want to hit on that opening drive bit for a second. That's one of the things, if you look at the Patriots all year long, that they have struggled with, Aaron, is opening drives of the opposing offense. The defense has had a ton of issues dealing with the script from pretty much every team. As a matter of fact, teams have scored touchdowns on their opening drives in 6 of the 8 games so far of the Patriots. So I would say to you, if you want a fast start from your offense, baby, The magic elixir could be this Patriots defense. So I said through earlier this week that I'm almost at the point where I just put 7 points up on the board. Don't even snap the football. Just start 7-0. Start with the deficit because this defense is an abomination the first drive of the game. Now, fortunately, they've gotten much better as the game has gone on, but that has been an issue. So you might actually see that play out the way that Atlanta needs it to play out on Sunday. The turnover thing, those numbers are crazy. It wasn't necessarily my first key to victory, but I did have turnovers listed, and it's just forced turnovers. The Patriots are tied for the fourth most takeaways in the NFL so far through the first 8 weeks. And, of course, that creates short fields. It gives you extra possessions. They've really taken advantage of turnovers since the awful game against Pittsburgh where they turned the ball over 5 times and lost that game at Gillette. So forced turnovers. Another key to victory, I would say, is that the Patriots, they have to win in the red zone. And that's on both sides of the ball. Looking up some things about Atlanta, doing some of the homework, they are atrocious in the red zone. They're bottom 5 on both sides of the football. Patriots need to take advantage of that. And I especially bring that up because, last week, look, great win. They did a lot of things well. But offensively, they were 2 for 6 in the red zone against Cleveland last weekend. So it has been an issue from time to time, this red zone offense, especially in the low red zone area, where they just can't finish. They can't get their run game going inside the 5-yard line consistently enough. So they've got to be able to finish drives in the red zone, and they've got to be able to make sure if Atlanta gets inside that 20, force them to get 3. And the final thing I would say is, and this might just kind of be a generic thing to say, but it's just sustain your level of play. It hasn't been perfect, but you've won 5 in a row if you're the Patriots. Sustain your level of play. You have the better quarterback. You're at home. If you can sustain that level of play, you should be able to win on Sunday, right? So it's kind of a pretty simple, break it all down to its simplest form and just keep that level of play where it's been. And if you do that, take care of the football, and your quarterback plays the way you hope he plays, you should come out with the win. So will be a very, very interesting game coming up on Sunday for sure between the Falcons, who need it after that Miami loss. I thought Miami was dead in the water. Somehow, some way, they made Atlanta look like they were dead in the water. So Atlanta needs to have a revival and show up on Sunday at Gillette. Patriots need to keep doing what they've been doing. That wraps up this crossover edition of Locked On Patriots and, of course, Locked On Falcons. Thank you for making us your first listen and for being an everydayer. Don't forget to throw a comment in on the YouTube channel. Hit that like button and subscribe. And for your second listen, get a double dose of the Locked On NFL podcast with Tyler the Madman Rowland and Tony Wiggins. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Have a great day. And for Aaron Freeman of Locked On Falcons, I will say, Nick Cattles here, Locked On Patriots. We will see you tomorrow with our predictions.